Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. We are so glad you are here, that you've made the time to either watch live or catch the recording. We're really, really glad you're here. First off, a couple of housekeeping things before we get to it. I do want to let you guys know that we have had some awesome questions in the previous webinar, and we are going to allow you guys to ask questions as the webinar continues. So as our incredible speakers speak and you've got questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and then as we get to them, we will also publish the recording and the answers to the questions within the blog post, as well as kind of a follow-up. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick off and kind of share what we're going to cover in this webinar for the new Yammer. If you go to the next slide, we've got really an awesome lineup for you guys. I'm really, really excited about this. So first up, we've got Mike, then we've got Robin, then Kasha, and then Adam. You guys, these are incredible people who have been doing some hard work behind the scenes, and some of you might have either heard them at different events or seen the work, and we are just really excited and proud of the work that they are up to and the work that they're going to be sharing with you guys this today. So without further ado, I am going to kick it off over to Mike. Mike, take it away.
Great, thanks, Allison. And today we're going to talk about the new Yammer. But before we talk about the new Yammer, just to ensure that we're all on the same page here, if you are new to Yammer or haven't heard of Yammer, Yammer is an enterprise social tool that works across Microsoft 365. It's part of all Office 365 enterprise plans. If you have been using Office 365, you may have heard us talk a lot about what Microsoft 365 is. It adds an additional layer of cloud security and an additional layer of kind of Azure behind the scenes. It is our premier offering for enterprises. We also have small and medium-sized business offerings for it. But Yammer is the rich social tools that power community experiences so that people can create and join communities, openly share with their peers, discover what's happening across their organization, share knowledge, and of course it's all built on the Microsoft 365 platform, so that comes with that Microsoft trust. So what do we mean by the new Yammer? Well, we've entirely redesigned and repositioned Yammer to focus now more so on community, knowledge sharing, company-wide communication, and how all those ladder up into the employee experience. So when we talk about the new Yammer, or maybe you've seen on social the year of Yammer, it's really two sides to that coin. The first is how we've redesigned the UI and added dozens of new capabilities that power leadership engagement, corp comms, and communities. And then also the other side of the new Yammer experience is our integrations into the rest of the suite. So for a long time, since Yammer was an acquisition, it kind of operated as a standalone silo. But over the past year, we've entirely rebuilt this using Fabric UI, or otherwise these universal building blocks, which allow us to extend into the rest of the Microsoft 365 applications really easily. So we have a new Outlook integration that actually came out for Outlook on the web this morning. We'll go deep into that. We have a new Conversations web part for SharePoint rolling out next quarter, and we have a new Yammer app for Teams actually coming out, being announced in just a couple weeks, that will allow you to bring all of your rich social experience into this single hub for teamwork. So as we think about how we've repositioned this, we wanted to get a little bit, or create a little bit more distance between the collaboration space, where our big bet is Microsoft Teams, and really give corporate communicators and leaders the tools they need to create a meaningful employee experience. So we're focusing on tools, or we have a lot of new features that are geared for leaders to help them connect with their employee base, hear what's top of mind for them, align on strategy, and kind of co-create their culture. We have a lot of new tools that help the next tier down, the corporate communicators, share that message to targeted audiences, to land that for all employees to stay in the know, and everyone at the company who needs to share their message to be able to do so in a very user-friendly way. And that's things like Announce Anything and pinning posts. And then, of course, these all ladder up into that employee experience. As Microsoft research has shown that increasing the employee experience or being intentional about how you create a more engaged workforce at your business leads to true business outcomes, such as higher employee retention, better decision making, even all the way at the edges of the organization. So people who might not always be in front of a terminal, like first-line workers, improved customer service, and then these all lead into overall higher profitability. So before we take a look at the huge kind of overall list of all of our new features and experiences, let's jump over into a quick demo. So I'm going to take control of the screen here. And let me know, my producers and presenters, can you guys see my screen okay?
I cannot see it quite yet.
All right, share, let's see, and there we go.
Yep. All right,
Great.
We see it. Looks
so
great.
Here we
Thanks,
are
Mike.
in the classic Yammer experience. This is the Yammer that you're likely familiar with. Up at the top, now I have this new try Yammer beta. I'm going to toggle into the new Yammer. And as you can see right off the bat, we have an entirely rebuilt and repowered home feed. And this uses UI this uses AI rather to really serve up what's most important to me. So I can see different conversations coming from the communities that I'm a part of. I see these beautified social cards where I can follow a conversation. We have new grid layouts for images, and overall just creating an intelligent, beautiful experience for the kind of first landing page when you get into the Yammer, into your Yammer network. We also have a new publisher experience. So when I click in, if I want to engage with this conversation, I have a couple new options. I have my rich text options here. I can attach a file, and now it actually includes suggested attachments. And these are the files that I'm working with peers closely, or the recently accessed files that I've been using, just to make it easier to find what I'm looking for. And I can even share expressive GIFs. We've kind of resized these as well so that they show up nicely in the feed. And as I scroll down, I can see announcements from my different communities. I can see how some of these conversations look. And if I hover over a profile, we now pull the Yammer profile from the same Office profile that the rest of the Microsoft apps use. And this just helps us bring a further cohesion to the overall suite. And similar, as you may have noticed at the top, we're now sharing this universal search bar and this universal navigation bar. And of course, this can be customized and set to meet your organization's needs. We've also improved the way conversations look. So we've added some unique styling to questions and to polls. Of course, you can participate with these directly from your feed. And overall, we're just making this a more informational, easier to access, easier to understand and glean out the content that you care about most. Let's go over and look at a couple changes to the community so you can get just a quick understanding of how the new Yammer looks and feels. So now I can upload a cover photo, and this gives me the ability to not only share my branding and my community identity, but also land critical messages in this really, really high visibility real estate. I also can now pin conversations, and if I'm an admin in this community, I can set announcements, but I can also now style questions, and I can style praise or polls as announcements. So by announcing a conversation, it sends everyone in this community an email, and it also creates an inbox message for them. So it's a really, really effective way for communicators to land their message, or to create ideation campaigns with questions, or to get quick feedback on polls, which, as you can see from here, are coming soon. We also now have the ability to favorite a community, so I can easily add it over to my left nav bar if this is a frequently accessed community of mine. And we've also added this new events tab, so I can look to see if I have upcoming events, or I can go and filter through past events. This community doesn't have any, but I know that our leadership community does. I'm going to jump into my events tab. I can look at a future event. I could go in and I could ask questions. The default by now actually puts you straight into question and answer format. I can filter by unanswered questions or all questions. This really helps with the moderation of the event. And then if I missed the event, and our research shows that only 30% of Microsoft employees have so far been attending these in real time, which means that 70% or so are watching the recordings, I can actually go back and still engage with this conversation. I can watch the video, I can ask a question, I can see what other people have been asking, and of course, moderators and other community members can weigh in on those questions and mark best answers and so forth. So from a high level, that is how the new Yammer looks and feels. Of course, we're extending this into SharePoint, we're extending this into Yammer, or into Outlook, and we're extending it into Microsoft Teams. So you'll get these fully interactive conversations wherever you are participating, and really making sure that Yammer is less of a destination and more of the rich social layer that runs across Microsoft 365. So I know we're short on time. With that, I'm going to hand control back over, and we will continue on with just a quick wrap up. There's two other things I want to touch on, and then I will hand it over to Robin to go deep on Outlook. But I'm going to stop sharing. And Dylan, if you can bring us back into PowerPoint.
Mike, what do you think what you're most excited about with the new UI? What's something you're most excited about?
I'm most excited about that it's built all on Fabric UI, or also what's known as Fluent Design. It gives the Yammer engineering team the ability to build out integrations super fast. So since we've announced this at Ignite, we've already built the new Yammer experience for Outlook on the web, which again shipped this morning. Next quarter, that will be coming out for the desktop apps, and it's going to totally change the way that communicators kick off their campaigns, as opposed to using distribution lists, as opposed to sending out polls traditionally or using a third-party polling system. You could be able to start those as announcements in Yammer, and folks, without leaving their Outlook inbox, be able to engage. I don't want to steal all of Robin's fire, but just our ability to build these quick means we have a new mobile app coming out. We have the Yammer team, or the Yammer app for Teams coming out, and just extending the power, increasing the power of how Yammer supercharges social interaction across your company.
I love it. So it's more than just a brand new UI. I love it. That's really good. Cool.
Absolutely. And that ties nicely in. Here are all of the, not even all, but here are top level new features and experiences that came out with the new Yammer. And I think it addressed 12 or so of the top 25 user voice asks kind of in one fell swoop. And some of these are actually rolling out already. You don't have to wait until the full new Yammer experience. But since I know we have some other stuff top of mind, I want to take just a quick moment to talk about using Yammer for crisis communications. This is something that is in the news. It's something that is top of mind for a lot of people. Truth be told, we'll keep this brief. It's not something that we really want to market to, but a lot of organizations have been looking to Microsoft for best practices on virtual working, remote working, how to keep their employees engaged and how to keep their employees safe and informed during worrying times. So I'm not going to go too much. I'm going to leave this mostly on the slide. It's been adopted from a Talk Social to Me blog post that we'll point to from our social handles and up on the Yammer blog. But Yammer, it does allow you to share important information at scale in a targeted way. You can reach a broad audience as well. It generates emails which are accessible from mobile. It allows people to share feedback, to jump in, and for, of course, using best answer, it allows leadership or HR teams or comms teams or legal teams to establish what is the company's perspective, their official answer on things. It also promotes kind of organic solution sharing for people on the floor, kind of on the ground where these situations are happening. So if you're looking for ways that Yammer can help during these situations, I recommend you either follow the link there or reach out to the Yammer team, and we are happy to share this information out. Obviously, our big goal is for everyone to stay safe, and we hope that everyone has the tools that they need in order to do so. Great, and with that, let's jump over. I'm going to hand it over to Robin, who is going to go deep on what we announced this morning, and it kind of ties into what we'll have coming out over the next number of weeks. Robin, take the stage.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for doing such a great job describing the new Yammer. Just to double check, folks, can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So as Mike described, this is what the new Yammer looks like. I'm just going to scroll through it for a couple of seconds just to anchor on what we're going to see inside Outlook. So we see a fully redesigned feed and a Fluent-based card-like framework for each conversation that shows up on your feed. I'm going to bring your attention on to this specific announcement that was made by Nestor in our demo tenant here in Leadership Connection. See how you see a collage of pictures appearing on your feed. You see all the latest information happening on this specific conversation. You see that seen by accounts. You see how many people have liked this specific message and the people who are commenting on this message and the likes on those. So put your focus on this specific conversation because we'll see how it now appears inside Outlook with the new integration work that we have done with Yammer and Outlook. A quick comment to make here is the reason why we are doing this integration is that we hear from a lot of our users and our customers that people use Outlook on a daily basis. Some of our customers and users actually say that they live and breathe inside Outlook because they're checking their emails every time. And it's kind of taxing for those type of users to go into Yammer and see what's happening inside Yammer. And if they do not go to Yammer, they pretty much are missing out on all the wonderful information and content that is being shared inside Yammer and their networks. So what we are doing here is bringing the powers of Yammer, bringing the information and the content from inside Yammer into your Outlook via the Outlook integration. Today, we're going to see what we launched this morning with Outlook on the web first on how we're infusing the content from Yammer into Outlook on the web. But to be able to do that, something that all of you would need to make sure is that you have your email notifications from Yammer enabled so that you start receiving emails from Yammer. And the quickest way to do that, if you are on the new Yammer or if you're on the classic Yammer, you can go into your settings and you can see edit settings on Yammer, which will land you onto the settings page for yourself and your network. And then you'll see a bunch of new settings which says email me when, and there are multiple options. The one that you need to pay careful attention to is the second checkbox here, which says email me when I receive a message in my inbox. Once you have this switched on, and what you will see while in your email triage workflow is the new Yammer. One thing to note here is, oops, I'm going to dismiss this, is that if you do not have the new Yammer enabled in your company, in your network yet, with this particular integration, if you have Outlook, you'd be able to feel what the new Yammer looks like because we're bringing the new Yammer onto Outlook on the web. So I'm going to go back to that specific announcement that we were seeing by Nestor. And since my email notifications are switched on from Yammer, I will now see that particular announcement in my email inbox. So just like you see here, it looks and feels the same as you would see on yammer.com or on the Yammer web. I'm seeing this announcement was posted in Leadership Connection. I'm seeing Nestor posted that announcement, and I'm seeing all the latest seen by accounts, which is been seen by 5 people. I see a wonderful collage of pictures also inside Outlook. And then I see everybody who's been liking this picture so far, this collage of pictures and commenting on it. And I can, since like Mike said, since this is based on Microsoft's Fluent design language, I can actually jump in to this specific collage of pictures and then go into a slideshow mode without having to leave my Outlook on the web or without having to leave my basic daily email triage flows. And I can go through these pictures. Seems like people had a great time. What Nestor is trying to picture here for this organization. And then I can close it. A couple of things also to notice is that since this is based on the Fluent design language, I can dive deeper into this specific conversation. For example, I see 2 people have liked this, and if I click on it, there's this panel that slides in from the right, which showcases the number of people who've liked that specific message or that conversation. And again, this is all possible through the Microsoft Fluent design language, since all the tools or all the apps from Microsoft now share that one common fabric, one common design language. I can like or unlike anything, just like I would do on Yammer. I can comment on this. And just like I would be allowed to add a GIF or a GIF on Yammer, I can do so from within Outlook as well. And I'll post it. So this is how simple it is now for you to be able to engage openly and inclusively with a company-wide announcement that is happening inside Yammer. And now that you have your notifications switched on, you will receive emails for those, and you can engage and interact with those announcements and other types of posts right from within Outlook on the web. One more thing that I wanted to mention here is that since we are using the Fluent design language, if I were to change my theme for my overall Office apps in my settings here from the blue that we have, which is not changing right now, but if I were to change those themes, all the color schemes that I see inside this conversation would follow that theme as well. Like you see here, as soon as I change my theme, all the colors are following what otherwise Outlook on the web would follow. So it feels really native to Outlook, and it follows the Office themes that the user would set. Now, if for some reason you want to go back to the old static email notifications, you can always hide this Yammer conversation by this button. And as soon as you click on it, you would see the old type of email notifications that we used to send, so that now if you want to take email actions on it, like reply all, and forward it to some of your friends or coworkers, you can do so from this and get back to the Yammer conversation by clicking on that button. And like I mentioned, this is not just limited to announcements. I can actually see all rich types of posts that the new Yammer has right from within my Outlook on the web. For example, here, I had posted a question earlier. I'm Megan. I had posted a question earlier. Is like, what were the latest engagement numbers from the last employee engagement survey? Johanna here replied that a recent survey showed 78%. So this is the answer that I feel is the best answer to my question. Now I don't need to go back to Yammer to mark this as a best answer. I can actually click on this here and right from within my Outlook on the web, mark that answer as a best answer. And now I've updated this specific question on Yammer and everywhere that it appears, including Outlook on the web for everybody who received this question in their Outlook inbox. So that's how easy it is for me to complete my tasks, because Outlook is the place where people go to get things done and organize themselves. And if I'm getting my things done in Outlook and I see some tasks from Yammer, I can follow up on those tasks right from within Outlook.
Robin, I've got a couple questions coming in if I can interrupt you. I use Outlook on the web all the time. That is where I hang out. But a couple of questions is, as you probably expect, when is this coming to desktop and mobile, or is this coming to desktop and mobile? Can you talk a little bit about the timeline?
Yes, I can. So the richness that you see here is possible only because of the Fluent design language that we are using on our web properties. This is going to come to desktop and Outlook mobile, and as well as Outlook on the Mac sometime next quarter from April to June. And we will obviously update you folks when we're ready to launch that. We are currently coding and dogfooding that specific internally to Microsoft, but rest assured, we have in plans to bring the power of Yammer into Outlook desktop and Outlook mobile. And as I said, since we are not using Fluent design language in desktop and mobile, it might not have the same number of richness or the same number of interactions that are possible with Outlook on the web. But at the least, you'd be able to like and react and comment and view the full conversation from whichever Outlook endpoint or whichever Outlook app you're using.
Great. I've got one more question for you. I think it's Lori or Laura is asking, if the announcement is read inside of Outlook, does it also collect the analytics back into Yammer? That's a great question. Okay, good.
Yes, it does. So we are making sure that if you are somebody from corporate communications, or if you're an admin to an exec and you're making an announcement, or a community manager, we make sure that if the user has read that specific announcement or message and also interacted with it, we account for those interactions as a part of the analytics and insights that we present overall.
Great. This is one of my most favorite things about the new Yammer. I use this all the time and I just love it. Your team's just doing some really good stuff. Thanks so much.
Great to know that. That's the kind of feedback that we want to hear. And if there's any more feedback, please feel free to send it our way, either in this chat or after the webinar as well. Before I hand the baton off to Kasha, I want to speak a little bit about other types of posts as well that we are doing. So for example, if somebody were to start a poll on Yammer and you have those email notifications switched on for yourself, you will receive that poll inside Outlook as well. Like here is a poll that I received, which I've already acted on, by the way, but I want to change my vote. I can go back to that specific poll and change my vote from right within Outlook on the web. For example, I click this change vote button. I say my favorite integration is the Outlook integration. So I can go back to it and vote on it. And as you can see, I voted and the results got updated real time. And I can actually keep on engaging with this poll until it's closed. So I didn't have to go to Yammer. I can engage with everything that is happening, all the important and the interesting stuff that is happening inside my Yammer network, right from within my Outlook on the web. And like I mentioned before, this is going to soon come to Outlook on Windows and Outlook mobile sometime in the next quarter. So watch, stand by for that and watch out for more information. And we'll let you know as soon as we're ready to launch it. That's all from me. Passing it on to Kasha.
Thank you. All right. So Dylan, if you wouldn't mind loading up the PowerPoint again, we'll start talking about live events and video. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep.
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. All right, live events and video in Yammer. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to talk about some of the exciting features that we have coming out in this area. Next slide, please. So let's briefly, before we dive into kind of what are some of the new cool things, let's just kind of level set for a second and talk about why events are so powerful. So events in Yammer enable leadership to communicate with employees in an engaging and meaningful way. They build authenticity and trust. It's a great way to share meaningful information. And it really allows employees to see the face of leadership and get engaged in the company mission. Next slide. So, one of the questions when we talk about live events is, when should you use Yammer? And obviously, we love events in Stream and Teams. In fact, we are using, obviously, Teams for this live event. And we've actually partnered with both of them in order to make live events in Yammer a reality. So Teams, for example, is fabulous when you want to include some external guests. And Stream is fantastic for embedding into SharePoint. But Yammer events really have their own superpowers. And when you use them really depends on your scenario and some of the goals within your organization. So if you're looking to create a type of event that lives on as part of your knowledge repository, and you want something like a persistent Q&A that can continue after the event, or if you're extending live events as part of your corporate comms, internal comms strategy, or if you're looking for a solution that is open, inclusive, and transparent, that's really where Yammer Live Event and the feeds are, they really shine. So decide, what makes sense for your organization, but these are just some of the top winning scenarios that we love to focus on. So if you want that to be part of the conversations you have in Yammer, the knowledge, and drive that transparency, this is definitely a winning scenario for you. Next slide. So let's talk about the life cycle. So the event life cycle has multiple touch points, and we're sharing this here for you to see kind of how Yammer is thinking about live events. So we've invested a lot over the past year and a half in the create and the produce and the join experience, and we're super pumped about that. But you can see innovation in each of these areas kind of coming up in the coming months, year. How can we kind of bring that end-to-end experience to all of our customers? Next slide. But one of the things that we're super excited about, especially in the area of produce and view, is our webinar style events, which are actually rolling out this month. So if you haven't already, if you are an admin of a community and a connected community, please check out the Teams Encoded events. We're slowly rolling them out over this month. And now actually you'll be able to use Microsoft Teams the way you were before. You can schedule and produce a live event using Microsoft Teams from Yammer. However, they'll be viewable in Yammer for all of your attendees. So it kind of brings the ability to view an event using your your laptop all in one place. Next slide. So let's shift gears and talk a little bit more about, video. So obviously live events, we do focus on video and live events, but why is that? And that really is because video is a very powerful, authentic means to communicate. Don't just take it from me, the person speaking on the other side of this screen. We've seen it across enterprises. There's a growth in video usage, and I mean, that makes sense. It is authentic. It does connect people to one another. Video improves retention. People remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they read, and 80% of what they see/watch. So, consider including video as part of your messaging if you want to really boost that. And videos are viral. They get more shares than text and images combined, and it's just a really powerful way to spread messaging. Next slide. So in Yammer, we have a couple of ways to engage using video. So we have that whole professional, studio-produced experience. You've probably seen that with some of the events that maybe you run at your organization. We do run our CEO town hall using this format. We now have the semi-pro webinar style broadcast using your webcam. You can have multiple presenters and some simple screen sharing. And then we have the ad hoc, quick on-the-go video capture, which gives you some annotation and editing tools. So we're going to talk about, when does it work? When should you use each of these styles? Next slide. So the pro and semi-pro production methods are best for events. We've talked about in some prior presentations how powerful the studio produced live event scenario is. Our CEO broadcasts their town hall. We've seen a lot of success for our customers. But if having a studio produced event is something that isn't necessarily the right tool for the event that you're trying to produce, you can now also have a semi-pro experience without the production team, still the same amazing quality using the semi-pro experience using Teams. So an example of that could be kicking off a Give campaign on the West Coast. So you don't need that whole studio team, but you still have that great quality as well. Next slide. Ad hoc video, on the other hand, kind of makes everybody a producer. And we're really, really pumped about this because obviously at Yammer, we love transparent conversations and we love giving people a voice. And so when you're thinking about mobile first recording, your CEO is going to the opening of a plant and they want to show what that looks like. Or maybe you have the sales folks in the field sharing, the best displays that they're working on. So, having a mobile first experience that can give everybody production tools, really what we're focused on here. Next slide. And so, short form videos are a powerful way to drive employee engagement and connection. There I am looking very engaged, obviously. And mobile video is a really easy way to do that. You'll see me kind of loading up, a logo or perhaps providing some text. I could be sharing my top of mind for the week or, just sharing an update, or if I'm a new hire, introducing myself. And on the right-hand side, you'll see what it appears like for users. And so that really immersive video experience is something that kind of takes the connection to the next level. Next slide. So best practices here, we've presented you with a whole bunch of different solutions. Think about how you can mix and match the video solutions to meet your needs, and that'll really drive the most engagement. So for example, let's say you have a corporate initiative like an inclusion campaign. You might start it off with a studio produced event, which is presented by your CEO. Then you might have folks at the org level or across different regions provide a follow-up with a Q&A, kind of sharing what inclusion means to them in their local areas. And then maybe you can even encourage engaging all employees to speak up and share what inclusion means to them. And that allows everybody to have a voice, and that's really what we're trying to do here with video. Bring your organization together across regions, across different locations, languages, etc., with video.
All right, Kasha, before you move on, I've got a couple of questions for you that are coming in hot in the Q&A. The first question was about the webinars. Are the webinars limited to internal users only? And yeah, share a little bit more about the webinars that you talked about. That's really exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited that you're excited about it. At this time, it is Yammer events are focused on internal users only. So that would be a great scenario as to, you know, if you're looking to have external users, looking at Teams produced events that maybe aren't hosted in Yammer would probably be your best practice.
Okay, and then another question coming in is, where does Yammer store video content? So can you talk a little bit about where the live events video content is stored versus where maybe the mobile video content is stored?
Absolutely. So all live event video content is stored in Stream. And for this mobile ad hoc video scenario that I've been sharing, that is currently stored in SharePoint with any other rich media file. So we are looking at storage in Stream for that as well. I know that's been an ask that's come in from a couple of customers. We're evaluating, you know, how best to do that. We want to make sure that we make the right decision for storage, but also playback and kind of some of the features that come along with that. So we are actively investigating expanding where the videos are stored.
Okay, and one last question. I just feel like we had a couple questions come in and just kind of like, can you share a little bit more about when you see other customers or the customers that you've talked to about using the mobile videos, and like what are people doing with that? Can you give me a couple of examples, or, you know, what do you see customers using that for and really wanting that?
Absolutely. So I'll give you two examples. One might be a little bit more strategic, and then the other one might be cultural. So an example of a real strategic initiative, you know, we've talked about at Yammer the power of getting your leadership involved and giving them a voice. And very frequently, for most employees, they don't get to really interact with leadership day to day. So encouraging leadership to post or share something using video in Yammer is one very, very powerful scenario. So we have a couple of leaders throughout Microsoft that do blogs or maybe want to explore using blogs. So testing that out as well in your organization using video as opposed to text will give a real personal touch. So just sharing a top of mind. One really powerful scenario for that is we've had leadership talking about sharing when they open up a new factory, sharing that back to the organization as like one really powerful way to use video to make everybody a part of that experience. And then when it comes to like a cultural example, we have customers that are super excited about, you know, celebrating the Super Bowl and giving everybody an opportunity to share what that, you know, celebration looks like in their local offices. That's another example of a way that you can really use video and then encourage employees to be a part of that conversation. So I really recommend partnering with corporate comms on some of those more cultural scenarios, because that can be a really powerful way to drive engagement and make everybody feel included.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. All right, and I'll be handing it off.
All right, Adam, you're up next, and I think the folks in the Q&A are anxious to hear from you because you've already got a lot of questions. So I hope you'll answer actually quite a few of them as you kind of share what's going on with Yammer Compliance, but go ahead, take it away.
Sounds good. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, sounds good. So thanks for the great intro, and I know that people are really excited about this. It's always fun for me to follow up Kasha talking about the super exciting area of video, followed up by the super exciting area of compliance. A lot of people hear me say that and think that I might be joking, but the fact is, a lot of our customers, including I'm sure some of you on this call right now, are working in regulated industries, and the fact is, until Yammer steps up our compliance and security game, a lot of your users are not actually allowed to access the system, or a lot of you aren't comfortable with providing access to communication tools that previously haven't offered the same level of security and compliance functionality that the rest of the Office suite did. This is something we're very actively working on, and we're doing our best to bring Yammer security and compliance up to par with everything else in the suite. And what I'm going to be talking about today is our first steps in bringing that along, including what it's going to take for your network to get on board with that. Specifically, I'm going to be focusing on a brief introduction to native mode and how it helps get your network ready for the compliance features that we're about to start offering. eDiscovery, data residency, and data governance, which are the first things that we're really focusing on in this area. Let's go to the next slide. So what is native mode? As I mentioned previously, native mode is going to help you get into a state where you're able to start using all of the security and compliance features that we're going to start using. Because I saw this came up in a question in the Q&A section, I'll go ahead and let you know that native mode is not a requirement to use the other features we've discussed today, such as the new UI experience or short form video or the other video features. However, it will provide a more consistent experience for your users in those areas, such as making sure that videos and short form videos can be used in every single group and community in your Yammer network. So what does native mode actually mean? It means that all of your users, groups, and content are backed by the rest of the suite. That means that all of your users are being authenticated using Azure Active Directory, all of your communities are backed by an Office 365 group, and all of the files and content that you upload into Yammer is stored in SharePoint instead of in Azure. It's also going to enable eDiscovery for all of the content that you enter into Yammer. And it's also the new default state for all customers. So any customer whose network for Yammer has been provisioned since January 9th of this year is already in native mode, and you're not going to need to take any extra action if you fit into that bucket. For our existing customers who are excited to get their networks into native mode so they can start using these exciting features, we are currently in the process of rolling out the native mode alignment tool, which is going to allow you to reconfigure your network's backend so that it aligns to native mode and has access to all these features as well. Next slide. So what are the benefits of native mode? There's benefits that are both available to the IT admin and the user. For the admin, it's focused on efficiency, peace of mind, and compliance. Efficiency in that knowing all of your users and groups are backed by the same backend that the rest of Microsoft 365 uses, and that a lot of the other upcoming features that we're going to be making available are automatically going to work for you once you're in native mode. Peace of mind, knowing that anything stored in SharePoint is subject to the existing governance policies in SharePoint, knowing that all of your Yammer messages and content are now available in eDiscovery. It really just makes everything more seamless, and it enables Yammer to have a better integration with the rest of the suite. Focusing on the user, it enables a more consistent experience across all groups. Today in Yammer, your groups have the option to be connected to an Office 365 group, but they also have the option to not be connected. There are some features that we've enabled in Yammer more recently that are only available for connected groups. So right now, users are seeing an inconsistent experience between connected and unconnected groups. Once your network is in native mode, every group will be connected, and you'll get a much more consistent experience across the whole product. This includes things like live events being available in all groups, richer integration between teams in SharePoint, and broader file discovery and file organization capabilities with SharePoint. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the key differences for native mode networks? I've touched on this in previous slides, but I really want to make sure that it's clear to everybody what actually happens when you align your network to native mode. First and foremost, all users have to be represented in Azure Active Directory. This means that if you're using legacy authentication currently, that is something you will need to update. All of the groups must be Office 365 connected. And the important thing here, and this is something that a lot of our customers are really excited about, is if you have carefully controlled who in your system is allowed to create Office 365 groups, that same list of users is going to be respected when they try to create groups and communities in Yammer. So a lot of our customers have previously asked about ways to lock down who has the ability to create Yammer communities. You now have the ability to do that by locking down Office 365 group creation rights. And we'll also be working on in-product workflows in the future that will allow you to have people request groups from the people who have permission to create them. There's a couple of important caveats here for external collaboration. Right now, external groups are not supported in native mode. That is something we're actively working on and expect to have available later in the second quarter of this year. But as of now, when you enable native mode, external groups will no longer be available. External networks, however, will continue to be supported as they are today. And you can also have your users join external groups hosted by other networks. You just can't create any external groups in your own network. Files. So as I mentioned earlier, all files do need to be stored in SharePoint. So today, for any connected group, any newly uploaded file that's put into a connected group will automatically go to SharePoint. However, what we're going to do when you go through the native mode alignment tool is we're going to take all of your existing files that are currently stored in Azure, and we're going to move them over to SharePoint for you. Let's go to the next slide. So best practices for preparing for native mode. First thing, make sure that your network is eligible. There are two core requirements here. The first one is making sure that you have a one-to-one relationship between your network and your tenants. So we have a couple of customers who are in a one-to-many state where there's more than one Yammer network associated with their tenant. That is not something that we are continuing to support overall. And when you move to native mode, that's a hard stop that has to be updated. There is a link on the slide for a migration page that will teach you how to migrate your existing Yammer networks to consolidate. And that's something that's available in our public documentation as well. Second is to enforce Office 365 identity for your home network. Again, I mentioned that a couple times. I can't stress this enough. You will need to enforce AAD authentication in order to be in native mode. Once you've got all that ready, you can download the alignment report. So we're currently in the process of rolling out the alignment report and the alignment tool to all of our customers. Anybody who has additional questions about this can feel free to reach out to me through my tech community blog post on native mode that went live last month, or you can reach out through the webinar session and let me know that you're interested, and I can let you know approximately the timelines for when your tenant will have access to this tool. Once you have the tool available, there is an alignment report that you can run, which will give you a list of all of the users who are not represented in Azure Active Directory. It'll tell you all of the groups along as their owners, memberships, or recent activity so that you know which groups will be connected and what needs to happen there. It'll also identify any external groups and the owners so that you can contact them to let them know that these groups will no longer be available. And it'll also give you a list of all of the current unlisted groups. So for those of you familiar with unlisted groups, these are the private groups where the user has specifically selected that they do not want the group to be available in search results. This is not something that's supported by Office 365 groups. So when you run through the native mode alignment tool, all of your unlisted private groups are going to become listed private groups. They'll still be private. Nobody will have access to the content who isn't invited or specifically given access. However, the name of the group will start returning in search results. It's important to keep an eye on this because it is possible that some of your leadership team may have some unlisted groups around possibly mergers and acquisitions or hiring decisions, and it might be important to them to rename these groups prior to them becoming listed. Once you've identified all the changes that the tool is going to make, you'll want to develop a communication plan and decide what types of targeted versus untargeted messaging you're going to want to send, whether or not you're going to require responses before you take action, and really just make sure that you're providing sufficient notice to your users about what changes are going to come in and when it's going to take place. Once you're confident in your communication plan and that you understand what the tool is going to do, it's up to you to export all of the data and files from your network so that you have a backup copy of the current status, and then you can go ahead and run the tool. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So once you're in native mode, the first and most exciting thing that you're going to get access to is eDiscovery. eDiscovery becomes available immediately for all of your content in Yammer as soon as your network is in native mode. This is being built off of the same platform as the rest of the Microsoft 365 suites eDiscovery. So when you do a search for content in eDiscovery, you don't necessarily have to specify that you want to see Yammer content, although you can specify to narrow it down. But if you did a search for a specific user, you would see all of the relevant content for that user across the Microsoft suite, including Yammer side by side with results from things like Teams, Outlook, and SharePoint. Next slide. The next big thing we're working on is local data residency. As you probably know, you already have the ability to migrate your data from the US to the EU and back, but what we're working on right now is making it so that this is a much more scalable process for us. We've had a lot of customers requesting this information, and right now it's a pretty manual process on our side, which means that we can only support moving over a certain number of customers per week. We're working on automating this process and bringing it in product so that customers have a lot more flexibility over when their network gets migrated, and also making sure that we can scale this to as many customers as want access to it. Next. So the last topic for me today is data governance. Data governance focuses on both minimum and maximum retention policies for the data that you're entering into the Microsoft 365 suite. Right now, if you're in native mode, your only data governance option is to keep data around indefinitely until we release updated data governance. If you're not in native mode, you have the option to do either delete mode or archive mode. If you're in archive mode, it's going to be that permanent retention that I mentioned in native mode. And if you're in delete mode, what it's going to do is it's going to hold a copy of all of your deleted data for 30 days to support features like group restore. But then once that 30-day period is up, it's going to entirely erase that data. Once we have access to full data governance for Yammer, you'll be able to set a minimum retention policy, which means that a user is not allowed to delete content for a certain period of time. Or you can set a maximum retention policy, which means that once a certain amount of time has passed, the system will automatically delete a message from the system. We do have a couple of enhancements that have already rolled out and are currently rolling out, such as GDPR in any retention mode. Historically, you needed to switch your network into delete mode in order to process a GDPR request. That is no longer the case. You can now process a GDPR DSR in any retention mode. And also, once a group is deleted, the messages associated with that group will now be deleted for networks that are in delete mode. Finally, we're working on aligning retention terminology with the rest of Microsoft 365 to make it more intuitive what different settings will do. All right, and with that, I will pass it back to the rest of the group to wrap up and give some final comments.
Adam, before you go, I do have a couple questions for you that came in. Can you just talk really quickly about native mode and files? Will you go back to that? Somebody kind of had a question of like, wait a second, what did he just say there? Talk a little bit about what happens to the files when you are in native mode and what's kind of that.
Sure. So there's two key elements that happen with files related to native mode. And I'm glad you asked this question because I just realized I only covered one of them previously. So the one that I covered previously is files that are currently stored in Azure are going to be migrated to SharePoint. You're not going to lose access to any of these files. We're just going to take all of your files that have been uploaded to groups and we're going to move them from Azure over to SharePoint. Once that happens, they will start respecting SharePoint data governance policies and be available in the SharePoint library. The other element to this is files that are attached to private messages. So we've determined that the Microsoft Suite has other systems that are better, more appropriate to be used for attaching a file to a private message. So native mode does not support files attached to private messages anymore. And that means that any file that was attached to a private message previously will be deleted from the system. You are expected to run a data export to make sure that you have a copy of all these files in case you need them in the future, but they will no longer be available in the system.
Okay, and one quick question. Dylan, will you go back one slide? In regards to the external collaboration, you talked about external groups and external networks, but can you talk a little bit about guest in a home Yammer tenant, and will they be able to use Yammer in native mode? Can you talk about guest?
Sure. So network level guests at the moment are not going to be supported in native mode. Network level guests are something that we are still investigating whether or not we can support in the future through tools like Azure B2B. And as a side note, Azure B2B is what we're currently working on in order to support external groups in native mode. And we're investigating whether or not network level guests will be possible through Azure B2B. Unfortunately, we don't have a definitive answer on that just yet, but we expect to be releasing more information on that soon.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks so much for answering the questions. And if you asked additional questions, we'll continue to follow up in the Q&A. All right. Mike, we are going to pass it off to you to kind of close us out with the last couple of slides. Great questions coming in. Feel free to keep asking your questions because we're taking them as they're coming in.
Great, thanks Allison, and thank you Adam. These last couple slides are just a couple quick reminders and promotions that if you're interested in some of the announcements and experiences you've heard about today, be sure to follow the Yammer blog. Just this month, we've had some news about the all company feed, how you can customize it, removing of some of the automated messages that we've historically had in there, and then some upcoming new superpowers you'll be able to do with it. We have some news around files in SharePoint, especially as it relates to native mode. And then we got a lot of questions about live events, so we definitely want to give a pitch for we have a new virtual assistant program that can help your organization get virtual assistants with live events. So that's how to schedule them and how to actually even host and manage them during the event. It's free for now while supplies last. I can't promise it's always going to be free, but it is now. So go to the blog, you'll see a blog, I think it was just about 2 weeks ago. You can sign up your organization and you can get help managing and kind of dealing with these live events so you can ensure with your C-suite that they're a success. But really just stay on top of the Yammer blog or follow Yammer on Twitter, and we'll be continuing to share news out. As we say, this is the year of Yammer and we have a lot coming out. And then I want to take just a quick look at the timeline of when you can expect some of these features. We're getting a ton of questions in the feed about this. And remember, if we can't get to all the questions during this hour, we will be putting these all into a kind of summary document of the Q&A from this session, and we'll be posting that back onto the blog. So if you didn't see your question get answered, hopefully we will get to it and we'll post it on the Yammer blog. But so new compliance capabilities are out now. These are already available. Yammer and Outlook, it came out for OA this morning, or for Outlook on the web this morning, and it will be coming to desktop and mobile for Mac and Windows in the next quarter. Also in the next quarter, you can expect to see the new Yammer app for Microsoft Teams. And again, this brings an entirely interactive Yammer experience. You can engage in your communities, you can upload cover photos, respond to conversations, even watch videos and live events directly within Microsoft Teams. So again, Yammer kind of working as that social layer underneath the suite. We'll also be having a revamped SharePoint Conversations web part that inherits the new Yammer styling. It gives you best answers, the new publisher experience, and so forth. And we have some new live event and video experiences that Kasha shared with us. That will be coming later this month or early April, and then all culminating in the new Yammer experience, which we can expect in the May-June timeframe. It will start rolling out. But there, as a quick reminder, there is no migration needed. Eventually, as we begin rolling it out, you will get the slider to toggle into the new Yammer beta experience. You'll, of course, also be able to opt back into the old Yammer Classic experience if there's certain features or UI familiarity that you'd prefer. Eventually, we'll remove that slider, probably closer to the end of this calendar year, or it will kind of dump you into the new Yammer as default, and then you can toggle back, and then we'll ultimately remove the slider, and the new Yammer will become Yammer. We have just a couple more minutes for questions. We'll scroll through the feed. We'll try and address as many as we can, but we'll also, of course, answer these offline and then post them back onto the Yammer blog. I want to give a special thanks to all of our speakers and all of the folks that helped us produce this event today. It's great seeing such interest in Yammer. We're continuing to work to make this product do more for our customers and come up with inventive ways to meet the ever-changing needs of our enterprise customers. So thanks a ton, and we'll hang around for just a couple minutes answering questions.
All right, Mike, just kind of going off of that can you talk a little bit more, and maybe we'll end with this question since we only got 2 minutes left, is what does the actual process of deploying the new Yammer look like? What do I have to do? What do I have to switch on? What are the technical requirements? And what does that look like? And we know that some customers are previewing it right now, but let's say, for example, we didn't get into the preview. So what will that look like from my experience or from a customer's perspective? Can you talk a little bit about that?
You bet, and if we can advance the slide, I think that this will help. Our preview program is closed. We had an overwhelming response to this. We had truthfully, far more organizations sign up for access to the new Yammer than we were able to grant in the first round of preview. If you are looking for the new Yammer, the best ways to get your hands on it early are using the new Outlook on the Web experience, and then using the new Yammer app for Teams once it comes out, and it will be announced here in a couple weeks and rolling out just a couple weeks after that. So if you're following our blog, we'll be making a lot of noise about it. But both the Yammer app for Teams and the Yammer Outlook on the Web experience, as well as a new Yammer app that's coming out, are all born on the new Yammer. That means that they all inherit the new Yammer styling by default. So the best way to play around with it will be in Teams or in Outlook, and then also in SharePoint. If you're waiting for the new Yammer for web, that will, again, it will be coming out in May, possibly early June. It will begin rolling out. And eventually you will see that slider. There's nothing an IT admin will need to do in order to deploy it. There's no content to migrate. You don't need to get your network into native mode. That is only for the other kind of compliance, security, privacy, overall administration benefits. But we'll send out, obviously, a lot of change communications. We're currently updating a lot of our Yammer technical documentation and use case scenarios so that you know kind of how to get started, how to get running with it. But there's no technical side of what you need to do. The new Yammer will come, and you'll be able to upload cover photos. You'll be able to engage across your numerous apps and get all the Yammer goodness. So
all right.
We hope we're excited.
That sounds good. Sounds almost too good to be true. I love it. That sounds awesome. Thanks so much. All right, guys. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and we will post the recording, share the slides and the questions and the answers in the coming days. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you out there. All right. Bye, guys.
Have a great day.